Dear God, thank you for bringing us together today. Thank you for the opportunity to have discussions with and on behalf of our community. Lord, guide us that we do it in a respectful way, that we always keep those that might need a little bit more aroha, a little bit more manakitanga, that we keep them in mind as we make decisions for the betterment of our community. We ask that you bless us today, and thank you for all the kindness in this room. Thank you, God, for bringing us together, and we ask that you bless us today. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, let us start with our apologies. Did I see Councillor Tibble is coming in online? Yes. Yep, so she'll be joining us online very soon. She's got allergic eyes. Any other? We've got Councillor Older online. We have Councillor Gibson online. Okay, so it's a full house. Well done. We're just waiting for Rhonda to join us online.
Except Anne.
An apology from Councillor Huriwai. Someone willing to move the apology? Moved by Councillor Mio, seconded by Councillor Foster. All in favour? One pre-carried. Thank you for that. Sally, yesterday when Joel, what meeting were we at yesterday? So during the meeting I did get a text message from Councillor Huriwai, and I forgot to add it to our apologies. So Councillor Paraka, you were there yesterday, Councillor Telfer, you were there yesterday, Councillor Mia, and oh, look at our civil defence crew on that side. You happy to accept that? Apologies for totally not doing it the way it's supposed to be done. Thank you for that, Sally. If you can just convey that to Joel. Okay, do we have declarations of interest? So I'm just going to set the scene for today. We've only have 3 papers, but they're chunky papers. So I'm asking everyone to be ready. I will be running semi-standing orders because I don't think some of that everyone would like to make a contribution. But just be mindful that I'll allow you to have one speaking turn and then see if everyone contribute, we might come back and give you another speaking turn. Important papers, and thank you for staff for a very, very comprehensive reports. Let's go to page 4, minutes. These have been sent to you quite some time back by the lovely Dee.
I'm happy to move the minutes.
Moved by Councillor Parata, seconded by Councillor Gregory. If there are no corrections, we'll take it as a true copy. All in favour? Aye. One pre-carried. Our action register, I have only one completed item on it. Thank you for that, Jocelyn. And then we do have our work programme, our governance plan. I have no leave of absence. Do I have acknowledgements and tributes? Anything that I might have missed or forgotten or... No, all good. We do not have public input and deputations today. No extraordinary business, notices of motion or adjourned business. Without further ado, councillors, I take you to page 1. That is our draft Waste Management and Minimisation Plan 2025-2031. This is, as you've seen, all the consultation feedback we have received and also recommended amendments. So without further ado, Jocelyn, who do I hand over to? Michelle, welcome. You come and join us in the hot seat. Thank you. I can shuffle a bit this way, Jocelyn, and you guys can all go. Morning. Charlotte and Di, welcome. How are you? We'll make more space here. I'll sit on Councillor Tupara's lap by the way I'm going. Okay, we've got enough space. All good. Kapai, so we'll hand over to you and then we'll open the floor for discussion.
Yep. So morena, I'm Charlotte Phelps. I'm the Waste Minimisation Lead within the Solid Waste team here at Council. So through your worship, we'll take the paper as read, but I'll just provide a brief summary of how we've got to where we currently are with the WMMP process. So following council decision in March to proceed to public consultation, the draft was released between the 20th of March and the 23rd of April in line with the special consultation procedures requirements. Consultation was promoted through a range of channels: radio, social media, Hanui, council website. We also had direct engagement with stakeholders, and iwi as well, offered them opportunity to meet and discuss as well, while forming their submissions. By the end of this consultation period, we received 27 submissions with 3 submitters requesting to be heard. So those submitters either here today in person or online. I think it's really important to note that overall, approximately 74% of the submitters indicated that they either support the WMMP to be adopted as is or with some proposed changes. It was also really encouraging through some of the submissions we received that submitters could see where they had been previously engaged with, that they could see where their suggestions had been incorporated into the draft as it is. So that was really encouraging. So following consultation, staff undertook, it was no small feat, we undertook a very detailed analysis of the 27 submissions. They were collated into key themes, where they potentially were already addressed in the plan but could be strengthened, and things like that. So some key themes that came out of the submissions were the importance of strengthening education and engagement, data and greater transparency of data that we collect back to the community, and suggestions of bringing forward timeframes and actions relating to the reduction of organics and food waste. During this time we also worked through the Mātauranga report that we had received. So this also informed a number of the proposed amendments that are contained within the recommended amendment. Staff worked directly with the author of that report as well when developing the amendments that were suggested. The proposed amendments that are proposed today are representative of consultation feedback and the Mātauranga report. Officers consider these amendments to more be refinements and ways of strengthening the plan while maintaining the overall vision and strategic direction that was publicly consulted on. The WMMP still includes 28 actions, each with associated measures, and the proposed amendments just further the reporting, accountability, and other bits and pieces that you can see within the proposed amendments table. Today we are seeking the committee's endorsement of the proposed amendments so that we can then incorporate those into what will become the final WMMP, and we will bring that to the August Council meeting for adoption.
Anything else you want to add before we listen to our submitters? Nothing further? All good. So now we're going to take the opportunity to listen to our 3 submitters. We're going to start with you, Sam. Welcome and thank you for your well thought out submission, and the floor is yours.
Morena everybody. Ko I'm Roland Toko Ingoa. Apologies I'm not with you in person. I would have loved to be there, especially because it was my first council meeting where I am talking to the new council. So apologies for that, but you've got me online, which is the next best thing. So just is my PowerPoint up on top of the screen? I just can't see it. And
just give us 1 second, Sam. Teremana is just getting it sorted. I'll let you know when we're ready to go.
Oh, there we go. I can see it myself now. Thank you. Cool. If someone could please just change the slide for me. Great. So I just wanted to start really quickly with a little bit on who Tairāwhiti Environment Centre is. So we have been running in the community for over 30 years. We have a hub at Palmerston Road, which I would love all the councillors to be able to come in and visit us and see what we do. So there is an open invitation there. I know we talked about this at the last council meeting, so that still stands. We have about 5,000 plus people through the door every single year. We last year diverted 18,000 kgs of waste from landfill, and we run about 20 waste minimisation workshops and have about 800 people off-site where we do education with around nature, waste and community resilience as a whole. We're very connected into national networks when it comes to waste. So Zero Waste Aotearoa, Parakore, Environment Hubs Aotearoa, Composters Network, and also the Energy Network. And we work with GDC, so we have a service agreement that covers a bunch of waste minimisation education and a bunch of our recycling schemes. We have frequent hui with a bunch of teams in GDC, and we're building stronger partnerships and with the waste team over the last about 2 years that I've been in the team. We participated in the WMMP early engagement and gave feedback then, and also developed a bunch of opportunities for the community to feed into those early stages of the WMMP, but we were not engaged in drafting the plan itself. Next slide, please. So I'd really like to acknowledge first the improvements that were made in the plan from the first draft to this one, but TEC does not support the WMMP in its current form, and the reason we did that is that we don't consider the plan in its current form meeting the standards of a truly collaborative regional plan for Tairāwhiti. In particular, we noted the absence of meaningful partnership with mana whenua, both in planning and decision making, and this really impacts the ability of the plan to deliver equitable, effective and enduring outcomes for our region. So we sort of had 4 parts of our plan that I just want to really, of our submission, sorry, that I just quickly want to highlight on. So upholding Te Tiriti of Waitangi, investing in reduce and reuse, solid data equals strong decisions, and a truly regional waste plan. Next slide, please. So quickly on upholding Te Tiriti and also long-term strategy of the plan. So the current plan itself, from the council agenda on this 12th of March, said that there was limited formal engagement with mana whenua to date. The Lytton Road Resource Recovery Centre proceeded without mana whenua support, which is a really concerning precedent for us. And the vision says co-design with mana whenua, but there was no mechanism that existed to deliver this. We really applaud the waste-free Tairāwhiti vision. That is a great vision. We're currently working with that ourselves in a lot of the work that we're doing in Tairāwhiti Environment Centre. But there's no real strategy behind that, and acknowledging that that might come from the implementation plan or the next steps in this, but we really feel like there needs to be a strategy around how we're going to achieve this beyond just the 6-year period of this plan. So our recommendation, the top recommendation that we had, is to establish a waste advisory forum with Māori partners first. This has happened already in Wairoa, so they have a really great model, as well as up in the far north. The far north's model really looks at incorporating te ao Māori, specialist knowledge, and also community priorities. We're a big believer that this problem of waste is the problem of all of the communities to solve. So being able to bring people together to share knowledge and ideas and pathways forward are really important to us. Next slide, please. So invest in reduce and reuse. And I'm kind of heading towards an economic case for this at the moment. So right now we've got a growing volume of waste across the whole entire New Zealand, and the cost is increasing, including it's very high here in Tairāwhiti. New Zealand's actually one of the worst offenders when it comes to waste, which is really worrying, and we really can't recycle our way out of this problem. So you can see by the diagram down the bottom there that really looking at reuse, repair, repurpose is where we should be heading. There is a really amazing example, many amazing examples across the country around resource recovery centres and working with community on this, and extreme zero waste is just one of them I've highlighted here. So 75% of all the community's waste in Raglan is diverted from landfill. The operation has a $3 million turnover, and 70% of that income stays within Raglan. In fact, the entity itself doubles every dollar from the ratepayers that they give them every single year within that year. And it creates 42 jobs, so 29 FTE in the region. So there's a really strong case to be able to do this here in Tairāwhiti as well, local jobs in repair, reuse, especially around things like construction and demolition diversion, which we've been doing quite a bit of commercial viability work on in the past 7 months. We can reduce the ratepayer cost into GDC through these community models and actually open up more financing coming into the region through the fact that you have not-for-profit organisation that's part of building these resource recovery centres. We're really pushing for parakore, so behaviour change rooted in Te Ao Māori, and transfer stations that are really those community enterprise hubs, as well as trying to keep our resources inside Tairāwhiti. Our roads are obviously a big problem, so the more we can create opportunities inside our region, the better. Next slide, please. Okay, I'm just going to do this one quickly because I know I'm running out of time. It's great to see solid data as a priority in the WMMP. We acknowledge that, and it's really great. There are massive data gaps, which are not unique to Tairāwhiti. They're like this all across the world, but all across New Zealand, sorry. But we just want to reiterate that we need to be really careful making investment decisions from current data that we know isn't complete, and would really like to recommend that we up that data collection, consistent reporting frameworks across all disposal services, citizen science, building local waste auditing capacity in Tairāwhiti would be great, and then reporting against the waste hierarchy, so showing where that investment goes across reuse, reduce, recycle, landfill. Next slide, please. So just in summary, what we're asking for, so establish a waste advisory forum, beginning with Māori partners in the community, prioritising reduce and reuse over recycling and disposal, fix the data gaps, so a full regional picture before we make any major investment, acknowledging some of that might be hard. Set timeframes for our waste-free Tairāwhiti, so when are we aiming to get to this, and then a long-term roadmap for how we're actually making decisions now that are heading towards that vision in the future, and then building local capability and economic opportunities to keep resources in Tairāwhiti. And I just want to reiterate that we are committed to working alongside GDC, Mana Whenua and other regional partners to get this right. It's really important for us, and we see this as such a great opportunity, environmentally, social, culturally, and as well economically in our region. So ngā mihi, thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Councillors, any questions of clarification of Sam? Doesn't look like it, Sam. Lovely, clear submission to us. Thank you very much for your time today. Next, I am going to invite parakore. We've got seats here, which I will take my stuff away. Kia ora, how are you? Please feel free to come and join us here. Whatever. Sit, stand, whatever's.
Whakataka te hau ki tūru, whakataka te hau ki tūru, mā kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai. Kia hi ake ana te ātākura, he tio, he huka, he hauhu, ti hei Māori ora. Nō reira whānau, koutou katoa, me the mea, koutou katoa, tēnā koutou. My name is Penny Campbell. I've been talking rubbish for since 1999, when I started my journey in Raglan, and we got together and we formed Extreme Waste in those days. And a few years later, we birthed Parakore from there. And and that's Penny Campbell. I've been living on the coast now for 9 years. I moved back from Waikato because Tainui thought we were from Tainui, and I came home. And I was very thankful that Pānapa Eho and Joe Mackay, who were leading Parakore into Tairāwhiti at that time, gave me the reins, and I was very humbled and whakamā, because these guys are the bomb when it comes to minimising waste, health, all those things. So here I am today, about to present and to submit to your plan. So my first thoughts, looking at the plan, it's still, as I said in my submission, as in page 12 of the plan, where the waste hierarchy is, we're still sitting in round about level 4 and level 5, which means we're still promoting a community of using up stuff. Up the coast, we continue to have lots of things, lots of food getting shipped up the coast, packaged food, and we're having to deal with it. So as a theme for waste minimisation into Tairāwhiti, we need to get further up. We need to get further up the ladder, or further upstream, as we say, or we need to go further down into the roots of it. Because at the moment, Parakore is pretty much, we don't have a contract, we don't have education into Tairāwhiti. I took over tūranga from Pānia Ruakere many years ago, and we haven't really had a lot to do, Parakore. We started off with about 20 marae 9 years ago who signed up to the program, and as the years went by, the funding went, we got less funding, and now we don't have any. I stand today just to, I still can, I cannot turn my back on waste. Waste doesn't sleep. Waste doesn't sleep because we're still, we have a world that's bringing it, turning ourselves into, we're being fed by somebody else. We're being fed, and so Parakore as a kaupapa is talking more about going back to the roots of the program, of the problem, which is all about our kai. So when I get back to the objectives of the waste minimisation plan, if I just talk to objective 1, where we will develop practical options that stop useful materials becoming waste, manaakitanga sort of comes to point of view, as I hear in your mātauranga report. What it doesn't talk about, and what is manaakitanga to our people, to the council, what is that? How do we show that manaakitanga when we're still watching waste getting used up, either coming in, going out, ending up on our beaches, down our rivers? What is that? And objective 2, make reuse recovery easier. It's not really happening in my community in Tokomaru Bay. We have a bin that gets filled with everything else, and not much else going on, not much else happening. I can say that the reuse recycling centre, if you want some really cheap scores, go there on a Sunday afternoon, and you can get some firewood, and you can get some bits and pieces, but we're still seeing a lot go out. In objective 2, you talk about kaitiakitanga, heal and protect our whenua. How are we doing that? Show us how we're doing it. We, at this point in time, I'm a hapu rep for the Tokomaru Bay landfill, and we are looking to move it. But what I, as a personally, why should we be doing this when we continue to make more waste? Why are we doing all this mahi, spending all these dollars, and people just continue to waste? What I'm talking here about is about how do we move our people to the promised land. So whatever we have in our plan. And so when we come to Objective 4 and talking about pono, yeah, I heard talking about good data, yes, but pono is something that what our beliefs are. Do we believe in it? Do we believe in what that data is telling us? And in whanaungatanga, Objective 5, we need more programs working with our people, getting our people how to get them to minimise in terms of coming back to what the reality is. So as all I can say is that at this point I can just round it off and talk about that when I can leave it to the analogy that kind of happens here in Tūranga, and I hear it on the radio whenever we have rain events, we send our sewage out into the river, untreated. And so that's what I'm talking about when we're sitting at number 4, we're busy just letting it all go down, just go out to the sea, and someone else will deal with it, generally Tangaroa. So, nō reira whānau, yeah, you've got my submission here. Hopefully it helps in forming your plan. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Unuhia, te uru tapu nui, kia wātea, kia māma, te ngā kau te wairua te tīnana I te arataka tū, koere e rongo whakiiri ake, kia wātea, rire hau, pai mārere. Kia ora mai whānau.
Kia ora, Penny. Any questions of clarification from Penny? Thank you for your thorough submission and your verbal submission. Thank you, Penny. Okay, Toby, we come to you online. Good morning.
Good morning. Kia ora. I'm coming to you from Whakatane on my way back home from the field day. So thank you, Mayor and Councillors, for letting us speak to our submission on the waste management. It's for federated farmers, we are supportive of the Council's proposals in the waste management plan. And I suppose our focus has always been around, rural agricultural waste is more than the urban. And we certainly would like to see the agri recoveries operations, some supported by the council to be able to expand them. Whether that looks to have more, days, like say 2 days a year, or when you go up the coast and you stop at the communities, giving more better access, support for agri recovery to get in there and actually get the chemicals and things and containers picked up, so they're not being buried or burnt in landfill. Understanding that agri recovery at farmers, we pay a levy on every drum and every or the silage wrap already, so it should be funded by by the end users, us as farmers. And sorry, I'm just lost my train of thought. Yeah, but we are understanding also that rural waste is a big issue for on farm. It's part of our environmental plans, our farm plans when we have them. We have to have a way of showing that we're actually dealing with on-farm waste, whether that's post and wire or our plastics. And supporting and around that for our rural communities is key. And actually finding a way to use them. And I think the speakers before me both would be supportive of what they've spoken to around, utilise our waste more and also minimise, and how do we make sure we're using products and things that are going to benefit us as a society, but also, we can create those jobs and find ways of reutilising it in our own region rather than exporting it back out again. You've got our submission in front of you, and so we are supportive. You'll see in there that Plasback quoted about their increase in charges around the plastic silage wrap and things like that. Plasback are a commercial operation that are sort of partly funded by levies, as well as they do have some charges, but they're looking to actually increase the charges, for charging farmers twice, where you pay for the soil wrap, so it's already paid for, but then you also pay for a collection. We're not in favour of having a model like that, because we find farmers will just choose not to utilise it. You should have one way of doing it, and that's you pay the levy and get it picked up. But and I'm not sure if you're aware that ag recovery are also going through a big change at the moment. The government's changing their how that business is organised and how they're running. So it's been going for the last 2 years, where they've reorganised themselves to be more future focused and more modern, to actually have a better way of ensuring we can retrieve our on-farm waste and either recycle or to repurpose it.
Thank you for that, Toby.
That's it.
All wrapped up? All good?
Yep. Thank you. Yeah, we are supportive of the waste management plan, and certainly the speakers in front of us had some really great ideas in terms of trying to minimise and and grow our economy around it.
Thank you for that. I hope you had a good time at the field days. Are you driving home in a brand new John Deere tractor or no?
No, I bought it. I was going to buy a ute at field days, but I bought it a couple of weeks ago when the fuel prices spiked. I bought a hybrid ute, so trying to do a little bit for our the planet and for our farm, and part of it, farming, modern farming, you try to adopt new technologies as they come about, to try to reduce your impact on the climate, reduce our impact in our communities, and certainly hybrid ute's been amazing. I think I did 1,500 kilometres before I had to fill up with petrol again, so it's pretty good. But that was, I recharge I can plug in and charge it again at night, so just plug it into the grid. And you can argue to a point around where the electricity come from, but it's certainly, there would have been two lots of diesel, 160 litres of diesel was 60 litres of petrol. So it's certainly been a big savings in terms of fuel on farm and things like that.
Ka pai you. Hey, thank you, Toby, for making a bit of time to talk to us today, and thank you also for your written submission. Drive safely.
Thank you very much, Council.
Thank you. Okay, I've done everyone. No one that I missed? No? Okay, now we are going to go back to our paper, councillors. So just a reminder to you, we're on page 12. And let me just remind you what we are talking about. So the recommendations is that we receive the submissions. So those are the written submissions as well as the verbal submissions we heard today. Then in the paper you will see that staff made some recommendations as a direct response to some of the submissions received. And then also in the paper you see that staff recommend, instead of 25 to 31, it should be 26 to 32. And then notes that the final will come, as Charlotte said, to the August council meeting for all of council adoption. So I just wanted to remind you what we are discussing, and the floor is now open for any questions, queries. Please put your hands up. I will make lists of who speak when, and we'll take it from there. Councillor Gregory, you go first.
Thank you for bringing this back again, and I just had a couple of things on page 24 and page 26. There's an amendment, the first amendment proposed, and the sentence says avoiding our waste becoming another region's problem in the amendment, and it's kind of a negative comment, and it's fixing up something else, and it's sort of turned it into a negative rather than, it doesn't even need to be there. That's one point. And then on page 26, in action 5, also in the column for the amendment, we'll publish progress against clear targets and timelines and openly report where performance is not meeting expectations. And I just don't think that's needed either, where performance is not meeting expectations, because that will be clear in the reporting anyway, and it doesn't need to be a negative on a negative. For our plan, we can try and stay positive as much as we can if possible. And that's all I wanted to say. Otherwise, thank you very much for all this work. I know it's a lot of work, and looking forward to seeing the final copy.
Thank you. Did you move?
I'll move this paper with the recommendation as we've been given.
Any other questions or queries from councillors? Councillor Telfer, thank you.
Yeah, I just you know, after reading all the submissions and listening to the submissions and what we've discussed about this going forward, you know, I think we just need to make it very, very clear what we're looking at this resource recovery centre being. And you know, if I look at it, I would like to call it a one-stop shop, because we've heard from Federated Farmers about ag recovery. We've got the environmental centre. We've got, if you want to get rid of building materials, we've got all these different places and different people that we take them to. We want to include all those people in this as well as one journey. So it's not Gisborne District Council that's doing it, it's everybody that's involved in that thing. So if you can go somewhere and we can deal with everything, it makes it, you will find by default we will get a huge uptake. So I think that's one story we need to really make clear in this plan, that that's what we're actually, the end target we're looking at. So, you know, people have been doing great jobs on their own, but if we can join everybody up, I think that would be the best outcome.
Thank you for that. Collaboration is king. We need buy-in from everyone. We feel we need to see people being reflected in this so that they feel part of it, and we all want to make it work then. Councillor Parata.
I think that the amendment, I'm impressed at the way that we've collated the amendments and pointed out where in the document we've made the amendments based on feedback we've received. I think that's an excellent model for council across the board. It shows actual engagement and actual consultation, and that the voices of the people does influence the way plans and policies are developed. So that's excellent work, first and foremost. There were just I'm sure it means for the whole region, but there were parts that I just felt explicitly saying that equitable access to education and initiatives for everyone, I think, is an important part, because 9 times out of 10, it tends to be that those initiatives are primarily city-based and sprinkled into the outer rural communities. I think it's just worth saying we care about it for everyone to have access to the education, to the knowledge, to the initiatives. That's the main part, I think. Wanted to acknowledge the additions of the collaboration and kaitiakitanga, as well as partnership with iwi. I think that's important that we say so explicitly, and that we continue to work towards enduring partnership. Debbie moved it. Did you move it?
Yeah.
Oh, I second it. It's a good paper.
Thank you, Councillor Parata. One question I had before I get to Councillor Foster was, we have seen the submissions, we've made some recommendations. You are now going to incorporate that into the final document, and then it is going to come to council at August for final adoption, correct? Good.
Yeah, thank you. I would imagine, well, I know that the Environment Centre has been involved with this from early in the piece, and for them to come out now and say that they don't support the plan is a little bit, I'm concerned. And particularly, you know, when we haven't been consulting with Mana Whenua in particular, because my understanding is that there has been quite a lot of consultation in that space. So I'm really quite confused about why they're still opposing the plan as it is, because they are a major player in the production of this plan, and yet at the last minute, they're not happy. So what has been the process to collaborate closely with the Environment Centre to get where we are, or where we need to be?
So, through your worship, so November, there was that stakeholder engagement. There was over 900 engagements, which the Environment Centre were involved with, both leading and participating in, and that brought us to the plan that we presented in around August last year. And that was in that August, Council Hui was determined to proceed with further engagement with community, so community could really see themselves in this plan. And so through that process as well, we engaged with the Environment Centre. We went down to the Environment Centre, we got butcher paper out, we did, ideas and things, and we did all of that, and that information there. We also went to green drinks with the Environment Centre as well, and then through that process, that informed, where possible, we incorporated that into what is this draft now. And then after the March hui that we just had to proceed to public consultation, we further directly contacted the Environment Centre and said, this is it now, this is the process, this is the time frame, we're happy to come down again and, talk things through. At that stage, we didn't get a response. And I'd just like to acknowledge the Environment Centre have said they don't support the plan in its current state. With the proposed amendments, we can see where we have reflected further from the submission received from the Environment Centre through this consultation round. We've really taken on board their feedback and suggestions, and we have strengthened them throughout the proposed amendments. So it would be interesting to see if this is moved today to then move to adoption in August, if the Environment Centre then would support the final adopted plan, because we would be further incorporating feedback that we've received in this previous recent conversation.
For me would be very integral about the success of this plan. I mean, there's no way in the world I'd be passing a plan that didn't have the backing of the Environment Centre. So it looks to me like they haven't really had a good look at the refined version, or this updated version, and we need that feedback to come back, because we would certainly like to have, me personally, like to have the endorsement of the Environment Centre before it comes to council, to make sure that everyone is on board and we're all on the same on the same plan, so to speak. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Thompson and then Councillor Ria. And Councillor Gibson after Councillor Ria.
Yeah, I'm sitting very similar with Councillor Foster on this. For me, reading the submissions and listening to the submissions, it seemed like it was sort of missing some collaboration and co-design. So my question was, where are we sitting now after the submissions and the recommendations? Do the recommendations go far enough? I just sort of haven't heard where we're sitting now after this lot of recommendations. So yeah, very, very similar to Larry, and I struggle to support something unless we've got buy-in from everyone and everyone on board. I really struggle to support something where some people are on the same sort of boat, or they're lagging behind.
Councillor Ria and then Councillor Gibson.
Kia ora tātou, thank you. It is my understanding that Sam and Joe, they've had these concerns for some time, that they have expressed those concerns both in engagement forums and also to some of us councillors individually, because I do recall twice being to the Environment Centre and they have brought up those concerns. I would like to see that when the final document comes, I support what Larry said, that absolutely when that final document comes, that those 4 key points, because in the world of waste management minimisation, the Tairāwhiti Environment Centre is the tohunga of, they are the ones who have been leading the waste minimisation, definitely locally within the city for many, 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 many years. So it is a bit of a red flag that they are not fully supporting it. So I'm happy to support in knowing that actually the 4 concerns that they've raised are going to be addressed prior to the final coming to council. That's all I have to say. Kia ora tātou.
For that, Councillor Gibson, you are next.
Kia ora tātou. Funnily, a lot of what I had to say was addressed by Councillor Ria, so thank you, Councillor Ria. I think that the key themes for me sit around cohesion and collaboration. I'm very supportive of the paper. I like the amendments, the way that they are worded, and I think that we should adopt them. However, I do see real value in establishing a waste advisory group. So I think from here moving forward, we are looking at a one-stop shop. We are looking at community collaboration to build our waste space moving forward. So I think, the submissions really address our need to work collaboratively, to work with our community, because that's how we get the best results in future. And I think that I'm happy to support the paper and the amendments, but I do think we need to continue in that vein moving forward in this space, because we don't want to get this far down the track in future iterations in the waste space or in any space and have our core partners in our community questioning where we are at.
Thank you, Councillor Gibson. Councillor Mio.
Yeah, and I'd just add my exactly that as well, that collaboration with mana whenua is key here. I thought it was a pity that the Matarangi Māori lens wasn't applied to the draft prior to going public. But yeah, otherwise I think the paper's really good too. But yeah, that collaboration is key, and yeah, I thought in the report the elephant in that was that it didn't acknowledge the Environment Centre not supporting the plan, but it's obviously there, and it's great that we had that good submission from Sam here today.
Awesome. Thank you. Message loud and clear. We support collaboration. We support the Mātauranga Māori lens over it. It is important. It's not what we do, it's how we do it. Any other questions, queries? If not, I have a mover in Councillor Gregory, seconder in Councillor Parata. All in favour? Aye. Thank you, Di, thank you, Charlotte, Michelle. Okay, councillors, we are going to move to our next paper. We'll welcome the lovely Sam and Sally. That's all good. I'll move this way. Kia ora, Sam. Kia ora, Sally. Thank you for your extensive paper. Welcome. Okay, councillors, I take you to page 99. So what we are looking here is approval to replace council's current corporate net zero 2030 emissions reduction target with corporate net zero 2050 target. And we will hand over to Sam and Sally, and then we'll open the floor for some questions. Ka pai?
Ka pai. Councillors, thank you very much for having us today. My name is Samuel Chadimana. I'm the Manager for Climate Change Response in GDC. I'll let Sally introduce herself, but before I do, I would like to also acknowledge my colleague Sophie. She's sitting right there. That is the young lady that did most of the data crunching and everything behind the inventory and the ERP that we're looking at today. And Sally was the project manager, and I was the technical lead on this project.
Sally McIntosh Tokawangawa. I'm the principal advisor for climate change.
Councillors, the first order of business that I had when I got into council was to bring a paper up to the then councillors to say 2030 as a target that had been set was too ambitious for the reality that we have. And at that point, I remember promising that we're going to go back and redo our inventory, then redo our ERP, and bring back to you options on targets that we would make a decision on, which we did. If you look at the ERP that we've submitted today, there were a couple of options of targets that were set. When we presented that to Ranga Whakaho, we were guided based on the fact that the circumstances that the council is in terms of the finance and also the possible future on rates capping, we decided that it was going to be more feasible for us to stick on a target of 2050. And that's the one that we are presenting to you this morning. Speaking of that 2050 target, I want to emphasize that it is a science-based target, as we promised. And we feel it is probably the most feasible and most realistic target we can set at this stage based on the circumstances I've just highlighted. Now, having said that, there is one focus that I would want to emphasize here, and I think in your paper that is before you, it's on page 104. I think let's start with page 102. If you look at our inventory at the moment, the largest part, which is 40% of our emissions, come from our procurement, and that is capital goods. That essentially is pointing to the fact that our works that we have done in the past couple of years on the recovery bit of the work, but also just the work that we do on our infrastructure is the largest source of emissions, followed by, of course, our waste collection service. But I would want to emphasize that also purchase goods and services, which is also 7%. So all in all, we're talking about in the range of about 80% of our, 70 to about 80% of our emissions are coming from our procurement line. And that is where also our burden of change is the highest, because of the possible intricacies and complications that come with us reducing those emissions. What you have before us here is a very promising, ambitious piece of work that we've put up, but at the same time, we are not saying it's going to be easy to achieve. In terms of return on investment, probably the best route we could take is to actually be able to look at how do we as an organization begin to deal with our procurement and the way we manage mainstream climate change across the way we do our procurement within council. There are quick wins we can get, and those quick wins we've highlighted them in the paper. We can do the audits, we can do the feasibility studies that we've got, which will give us more direction as to where we can go. We can look at renewable energy projects on building like the ones that we have. Those are beautiful projects that we could do, give us the visibility, we could cut some ribbons. The truth of the matter is most of the work is in the procurement space. And I guess that's where the conversation, which is a very difficult one, needs to be had. I'll pause there. If there are any, and essentially asking from you today in terms of, we are asking that if you could go ahead and endorse the replacement of the 2030 target with the 2050 target that we've got at the moment. But at the same time, I think we are cognizant of the fact that at the end of the day, you can also adopt the ERP that we've done. The issue with the ERP that we've given you, as I said, is actually going to be in phases, and we want to say some of the phases that are going to be the preparatory phases for the first couple of years. So I guess I'll end there for any questions that could be raised from the floor.
Sally or Jocelyn, anything you want to add before we open the floor?
No, nothing further from me. I think that just that the ERP and the way that our recommendations are worded at the moment is more around an endorsement of that plan to guide our thinking going forward. It highlights the hierarchy of decisions and also the constraints that Sam has outlined. So it's, we're not asking for an adoption of the plan, that this is like setting out the way. It's just it sets out the possible actions and timeframes and thinking and costings around.
All good. Okay, councillors, I am going to open the floor for any questions or queries you can have. Councillor Gregory.
Oh, thank you. I can still remember this coming to us back in the day and fighting with Tony Robinson and trying not to beat the government with the net zero target. So I'm fully just in support of this paper and I'd like to move it.
Thank you, Councillor Gregory. Councillor Foster and then Councillor Telfer.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, no, I was the same part of the initial plan, and it was always aspirational, and I don't think we ever thought it was achievable at the time, but we wanted to make a statement to say that, hey, we're serious about this issue and that we want to actually put it out there that we want to work hard on it and try and get our emissions down. So that was the intent, but it was never going to be achievable, and it was very aspirational. I'd still think even 2050 is pretty aspirational to have zero emissions, without any offsetting. I mean, the only, it's almost impossible, and but to change the phrasing might weaken the intent, so to speak. But I would certainly like to see what the offsetting is capable of as well for the future, when we've got a lot of carbon farming, carbon being produced here to offset that, rather than it being used offshore. So I support where we're trying to head, and I've just got to be mindful of the cost to the ratepayers as well. We've got to make sure that it is value for money that we input into this to get the initial intent that we want to get to. So yeah, thank you. It's a good paper. It's good to read, and nice to know that we have done some reductions already over that period of time. That is controllable. There's so much there that is not controllable out of our hands, with procurement in particular. Thank you.
Councillor Telfer and then Councillor Mio.
Yeah, just on page 116, just on the executive summary, around the our council-controlled organisation, Gisborne Holdings Limited, is included, but emissions take, but this is basically council on its own. Can you just clarify? Because I would have thought that if we're looking at council, it should be everything that we own, and so can you just a bit more clear update on that?
Yeah, just as a point of clarity before I answer, are you looking at the separation from GHL that we have put very clearly there?
Yeah.
We've had conversations with GHL on that basis, and it's because they have also been doing their own work in their own space, and they have already gone ahead and developed their own ERP and their own work. So what we did essentially though is that we included them somewhere in our scope 3. But other than that, we allowed them to stay out of the boundary of our inventory, which also speaks of the boundary that we've created for our own ERP. And it is because we felt it was wiser at this stage to let them continue operating as in terms of the emissions, that they could continue making their own accounting, and we could continue also doing our own accounting. But maybe in the long run, depending on how we arrange the institutional arrangements, we could actually merge in future. But for now, we decided to keep it as a separate entity.
Councillor Mio.
Yeah, I was intrigued at that. With this, these are our corporate emissions, but our corporate is not included at the moment. So I support the move to a net zero 2050 target as much more realistic than what we own. I acknowledge that 80% comes from our procurement, which is going to be really difficult. Yeah. I think that there should be a formal review of the situation at year 3 about GHL coming in, and with the intention to set near-term interim targets at that stage, because and then have 3 years to learn a lot more about the situation, so we can be in a position when we do the next long-term plan to be making interim targets at that stage.
Yeah. If I could be allowed to speak a little bit more candidly about GHL, the challenges that we have is that the setting of interim targets, I just need to put it across that the setting of interim targets is something that we actually would agree that needs to be done. And also one thing that I need to say very clearly is that interim targets are not formally binding. We cannot be litigated against for setting interim targets. The best practice behind setting interim targets is essentially to guide our progress so that we can be measuring ourselves and we can be doing monitoring on the progress that we are doing. So yes, I think in the long run, there's a lot of value in us setting interim targets. The GHL element, and we are going to continue. We might come back at a later date to talk about what we are also facing, which is an external challenge around reducing emissions in the agriculture sector. And I think that's a conversation that we might need to have at a later date, in that it is very, very difficult to reduce emissions in the agriculture sector. And that space is a little fluid at the moment because of national direction that is also kind of changing and quite wobbling at the moment. So yes, Councillor, I think in the next 3 to 4 years, we're hoping that we can get much more clearer guidance on what the national approach on emissions reduction in the agriculture sector will look like. If you've been following the news and you've been seeing what's happening at the national level, I think the coalition government at the moment is also kind of looking in that space. So that's where we are.
Clarification.
Yes.
Yeah, just on my, when I brought that up, it was around, on what I read in front of me. I totally actually agree that DHL should be able to operate as a commercial entity, because their decisions to maybe use those carbon credits to do some other commercial increases about lifting this whole thing up, we need to be able to leave that with them. At the end of the day, when it comes to actually looking at our total amount, if GHL through their own operations is positive, we should be able to bring that in. That's all I was looking at. It's very, very likely, and I know they are positive, quite positive, so to be able to bring that into the overall at a high level, but not controlling and making decisions. That's where I'm just coming from.
Councillor Gibson, did I see your hand up or did you take it down? Down. Okay, next I'm going to go to Councillor Ria then.
Thank you, Your Worship. I don't have much to say, just that what excites me is the timeliness of the 10-year plan and also the holistic lens that we're looking through right now. We have our emissions trading scheme, we have our waste management minimisation plan, we have our climate change stuff, and those for me are really cool because then I catapult myself 25 years forward when I'm 70 plus and I've got a few grandchildren running in and around this community, and so all of these things working together, like how can, once the waste minimisation plan is in place, how does that also reduce emissions from the emissions paper? So it's really nice weaving all of these bits of information together. I enjoyed reading the first one and then reading onto this and see how they might be able to connect together. And then some of our stuff from yesterday from civil defence and how that also fits into some of this in terms of our climate change responsibilities. So thank you very much. And did anyone second? I will second. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. And if I may, through you, Your Worship, I agree with you, Councillor, that the timing is perfect, even for us, because we are at the moment trying to rush through a couple of bits of work. One of them is the development of the Climate Action Plan. I know as a team we haven't yet been before you to talk to you about the work program that was approved in June last year. But if I could take this opportunity to say that we are at the moment trying to, before the close of the current LTP process, we're trying to rush through a work program that will be part of the full climate action plan for the whole of Tairāwhiti. So we hope that we could bring that before you as well, before end of the year.
And for me, looking at this paper, to me, when I first saw it, I felt a bit defeat. But it is realism, and it is, I remember us debating this, and it's true what Councillor Foster said. It is, we want to be aspirational, and we want to make sure, that's what Councillor Ria said, we don't think about ourselves, but our kids, our mokopuna in 20, 30 years. And, but I do want to congratulate you on a paper well written. It is sobering and realistic, but that is what we are dealing with. I do want to make sure we don't see this as a defeat. We see this as us looking at what we set out to achieve with certain caveats in place, and us now getting all that data together, but still signalling and making sure our community and our kids and our grandkids know that we do take this seriously, and we do see where we play our role, not only the Gisborne District Council, but also GHL, who also I know is serious about this. So thank you for this. And I'm going to open the floor for a few last questions. Councillor Thompson and then Councillor Tupper.
Yeah, I just had a couple of comments. Yeah, we all want net zero, but at what cost? When we're realistic, what impact we're actually going to have on the big climate picture, it's pretty much nil. So it's summed up on page 109, net zero 2030, provided feasible without significant financial impact on ratepayers, and it's confirmed it's going to be a significant financial impact. So, yeah, but based on that, yeah, I'm more than happy to put it out to 2050.
Councillor Tupera and then Councillor Parata can bring your own points.
I'm going to be the stick in the mud, I think. Not really a question, but just an observation and a comment. I think in 2030, our council will be sitting here pushing it out to 2070. I think the aspiration for the 2030 target is just shifting along. The report for me isn't strong enough in a pathway to actually make 2050 work. It's a pass the buck, for want of a better term, and we'll keep passing that buck. And whilst there are difficulties and huge impacts on our ability to fund or to make this work, I just have a difficulty supporting this paper because the planet can't sustain that. And we're passing the ball further along. And I do see it, and I appreciate everything that's in there. It's a devastating read, in my view. I found it quite horrific. But we don't have an answer to that. I find that even worse. I find that it's one of those rock in a hard place things, eh? So I'm not going to support the paper, just so that there is a little bit of niggle, discomfort, sitting in the space, so that it's always on our mind and our puku, what's going on, if that even makes sense. So just that comment. But I do appreciate the massive, everyone needs a Sally. Oh my gosh, how do you get all of that and put that into there? So I really do appreciate that. Thank you.
I'll be completely honest, I struggled through it because it's complicated, I think. I don't know if other people found it complicated, but I found it difficult to wrap my head around what it is that we were trying to achieve, how we were trying to do it, and how we're measuring it. It's all clear in the document, but to understand it, just as a person who does not have a science background or a climate change background, I found it challenging. I do, however, agree that, well, my perspective is that there's no point having a 2030 date if it's a lie. is a lie, we can't do it.
Yeah.
I just don't think that, and I think that we're a council that is just to stand on business and tell the truth. We can't achieve that. That's not realistic.
Yeah.
What we can achieve is 2050. We can work towards that. And I would rather say we're working towards it than hold on to this dream lie that's not happening. It's just not happening. And just because it sounds good doesn't mean we should stand behind it. It's not happening. We're not there. 2050. There was a part, however, and I don't know whether or not this fits in this space, but the mahi of the ERP I know is specific to the Gisborne District Council. I wonder too if it's possible to create a roadmap or a template for other parts of our region. Not for us to determine how they should consider, how they might contribute, but if you wanted to start thinking about it, here are the things that we thought about for our own that might help you as an industry consider. And one last, I don't know if it's a point or not, and I respect the fact that I'm talking to experts and I myself am not an expert. What I couldn't see in this paper, and I don't know whether it belongs to the ERP or it belongs to your office, your team specifically, is how emergency management and recovery play into the spiking of our carbon emissions, and whether or not we need to consider that, knowing that we have so many events that require recovery. We were told yesterday that we've been in recovery for just a ridiculous amount of time, Just a ridiculous amount of time. Is that something we should be considering and or planning for? Is this something that we will always, for the foreseeable future, need to deal with, and therefore we need to have an allocation and or considerations as to how recovery and emergency management fit into either this space or I'm not sure.
Okay. I will quickly cover the point you raised about the external facing emissions. So just quickly, there is a strategic document paper that has just been drafted by the team, and a memo is being written right now that has to go to Tairāwhiti Whakaho on what our assessment of that is. But the short of it, councillors, it goes back to what I said about emissions. As a region, 75% of our emissions come from agriculture, particularly livestock. As I said, it is a very difficult space to decarbonize without moving the whole economy. So we are actually shifting our thinking from emissions reduction to how do we have a whole comprehensive approach. I'll be very, very keen to see what you think of what we've come up with, but first we will have to take that to Tairāwhiti, which I'm hoping will happen in the next month or two. But we have some thoughts about it. Then the other part, the 3 R's as far as I'm concerned, I agree with you, councillors, they need to work together. Reduction, recovery, response and recovery. There's also some thinking that we're doing on that, and it will come through the MAHI we are doing on the development of the climate action plan. There is a memo that is set for 23rd of June that is going to Tairāwhiti Whakaho, where we suggest a bit of that as well. So let me not speak more about it, we'll come back with more detail on that.
Can I just have one more?
Yes. And then we'll go to Councillor Gibson and Councillor Alder.
I again don't know whether this fits within the confines of the ERP or with your team specifically. Does minimizing our carbon emissions, will it impact us directly? Does it benefit us directly, or are we contributing to a global, are we participating in what we should do as good humans, or do we get benefits from doing it?
Very, very good question, Councillor. If we just pursue emission reduction purely for emission reduction, then we become tree huggers. Our approach in the strategic document I've mentioned is that we are looking at core benefits. People are only going to support the transition from a high carbon to a low carbon economy if they can see that there are benefits in terms of jobs, in terms of all those elements. So we are thinking about what are the core benefits that come with that. Otherwise, the transition won't be supported. Yeah, so there's a bit of thought in that, and it's all embedded in the strategy document we've developed.
Okay, Councillor Gibson and then Councillor Alder, and then we'll put the paper.
Yeah, I'm really supportive of shifting out to 2050. The science is moving very quickly in this space internationally. I have real questions around offsetting. It's widely accepted in the Aotearoa science community that the ETS is not fit for purpose. So I think before 2050, we could see a real shift in the way that the world looks at offsetting. So that really does worry me around achieving net zero and if we have the approach of offsetting. So I think that that's something to consider. But I see real ability. To me, I look at it and see, hey, by 2050, we actually, all of the things that we've been discussing over the period of this term, and even it was interesting to have some discussions around property acquisitions and all of the things that we know around transport is possibly one of our biggest things, like that waste piece around getting our waste out of region to refuse stations, like that is a big reduction if we can bring that into our region. To me, I think it's those big pieces of work that are really going to achieve this, and I would like to see real reduction in our actions rather than relying on offsetting. I know there's been some conversation around offsetting, but I think it's teetering in the international science community, it's teetering in the Aotearoa science community, and it's something that I think pushing it out past 2030 to 2050, we're going to see some real change, and we're going to and it may not be realistic, but it may be that we have a lot more information in the next few years that will help us get closer to zero by 2050. Sorry, it's a bit of a rant, but that's where I sit.
Thank you, Councillor Gibson. Councillor Alder.
No, thank you, Your Worship. Sam, and thank you for the report. It is such a comprehensive report and very interesting to read. We obviously have to push it back because there's no way we can do that in the time scale. But having said that, I do find it frustrating that we can't move faster. There must be there's lots of low-hanging fruit that have financial benefit within this. And, prime examples are electrification and having our own Class 1 dump, and again, the frustration I get when I see a 7 to 10 year time span before we have an option of having our own dump. If we could get that tomorrow, that's a big win, massive win. Other sort of comments were, there's a lot of consultation and a lot of, a lot of research has to be done to progress. Have we and can we network with other councils, Nelson as an example, who have fully electrified their busing fleet? So my question is are we looking at networking? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Just a quick answer to that is to start with just the way we are setting our inventory for the region. We are part of the LEDP platform that is being run by a consortium, so to say, of all regional councils, partly in the North Island and South Island. So already we are partnering in how we are actually doing our inventories to start with, so that at least we are standardized in that space. Then we are part of a number of national platforms where there is peer-to-peer learning, and there's a lot of exchange of ideas between councils. And on the other part, we are also part of Te Uru Kaika's work. So most of learning in those platforms we are getting and we're bringing into this space. So yes, we are always learning. One good example I can use is developing the mainstreaming guides that we're going to be developing. We've had to network a lot with Auckland Council and Dunedin Council so that we don't invent the wheel when others have already done it. So there's a lot of that going on, yes, Councillor.
Okay, well, if there are no more discussions, I'm not sure. Oh, Councillor Tairāwhiti.
Yeah, look, I don't quite agree with Colin for a change. So if we are really serious about this, there is technology in this world at the moment that other countries are doing, and I'll mention waste to energy plants, biochar plants, just getting our own class 1 landfill is not solving the problem. We're just transferring the problem at probably less cost because we don't have to transport it so far. So I think the biggest shift, and if you look what happened in the last few years with technology, it's just unbelievable. You know, we've got cows being controlled with collars around their necks. We don't need fences. Like, who would have thought that 20 years ago? And it's going rampant. So if we are serious about it, there is already technology there. Japan, other countries have been doing these waste energy plants. What's one of our biggest shortfalls in this country? Electricity. You know, we can actually use our waste to actually produce electricity, reduce the waste. The technology is already there. So I think we just need to get serious and get on with it. If we're going to set these targets, we need to have a path to actually say, this is how we're going to do it. And that's one way that we can make the biggest impact in this area because of our isolation and solve 2 problems.
Thank you for that. Councillor Mayor, go for it.
Thank you.
Put a bow around it for us.
So Sam indicated that we might be ready in 3 to 4 years to set interim targets, and I think we do really need to be aspirational. And can we do it in 3 years? Can we add another recommendation that we are aiming to set near-term interim targets in 3 years' time? Particularly, 2040 is a time where we need to be really aspirational. That's bicentenary of Tairāwhiti. It would be really great to be, in 3 years' time, to be setting a really aspirational target, particularly with 2040 in mind, on our pathway towards 2050.
Because we don't just want to put something there to make us feel good.
Yeah.
We need to put something there that we feel is aspirational and something that can be achieved.
An amendment?
No, it's just no amendment, it's just adding another. Well, what Jeremy asked, what I heard is that Councillor Muir said Sam indicated that there could be a review in 3 or 4 years' time where it can then possibly be taken to a 240. Is that what you said?
No, that in 3 to 4 years' time we might be ready to be setting interim targets, to have had enough new data come in to be in a place to be setting interim targets, and so let's be aspirational to target that in 3 years' time.
I'm going to speak from a best practice, Councillor. I'm going to speak from a best practice type of approach on this one. Interim targets, as I said, they are not legally binding. So nobody can sue us out there to say we didn't reach an interim target. But what they're important for is that they help us measure our progress. They help us see how we are tracking. So from a best practice perspective, yes, setting interim targets is a good thing. So yeah, but the decision as to whether we do that in 3 years, I think I'll leave it to the powers that be.
But I think there's definitely an action there to have a review of the ERP and the actions like that. That's one of our clear actions in there, is to increase our monitoring and data management, and also have ongoing reviews. So yeah, that could include that discussion. discussion of interim targets at a later date, you know, at a review period.
I'm okay with that to support as is, but I think that really should be where we're at in 3 years' time, that we're setting interim targets.
I thank you for a well-informed discussion. We've got a mover in Councillor Gregory. We've got a seconder in Councillor Ria. All in favour? Aye. Carried. Kia ora. So we are moving to our last paper for the day. Thank you, Afina, for joining us. Councillors, that is page 240. It's the resource consenting statutory performance. And this is a noting report. But Afina, I'll pass over to you and Jocelyn, and then we can open the floor for questions.
Good morning, Your Worship, councillors. This report provides an update on the consents team's performance and continuous improvement. Some really great results that we've achieved over the last 12 months, and it's a reflection of our whole team who are focused on delivering some of the services and work streams that with the aim and focus to servicing our community. You'll note from the report that our team has maintained consistently strong performance over the last 12 months, achieving between 96 and 100% compliance, which is really good. And you will also see from Appendix 2, our continuous improvement program, a significant amount of work has been completed across multiple work streams. Some of the key achievements include the implementation of our customer touchpoint model. We have implemented and developed a standard operating procedures manual. We've made significant improvements in cost recovery and financial management. We've got a number of new processes around Māori engagement and cost recovery for iwi advisors. We have put in place and established key account management approaches for businesses, and we've made significant improvements around consultant performance management. Some of the more significant programs of work that we're working on is strengthening our forestry consenting systems and processes. And over the next 12 months, our focus will be more on refining and optimising some of those work streams, while we look to the regulatory reform program and the work that needs to happen there. One other highlight is that we've made a commitment to supporting some of the other teams inside council in preparing resource consent applications, rather than that work being commissioned to external consultants, and we are now discussing with other councils shared models to alleviate the need for using external consultant planners. The aim is all around cost savings. We are also doing quite a lot of work at the forefront on forestry consenting, supporting setting national direction for forestry regulation and practice. Over the next few weeks, we'll be meeting with Tasman District Council, Hawke's Bay Regional Council and Marlborough, providing them with oversight into our forestry consenting work program, and we'll be sharing with them our guidance templates and conditions. We have already done that with our council.
Awesome, thank you, Afina. Jocelyn, anything you wanted to add?
No, thanks. I think we've done a significant amount of work, and certainly timely with the incoming transition to a new resource management system, where our focus as a unit will be on a lot of front-loading engagement and pre-application service, so that we're supporting consent applicants through the statutory process as we can. That's great. Well done. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Okay, councillors, I am going to open the floor. Any questions or queries? Now is your time. Councillor Foster, thank you.
Thank you. To start with, on page 244, it says that 405 resource consents granted up until 30th of April 2026, and it says 180 for February, March 207, and April, the total of 405. But if you add it up, it means there's only 18 consents that are done in April. That can't be right, considering the amount that were done in February and March last. So to me, 180 and 207 is 18 short of 405. So that was the first thing I picked up. Page 244. And at 14, where it's got in 14, 244.14, it's got at the bottom of that sentence, and then it's got the planning regional and monthly totals at the end. So when I went through that, I thought, that doesn't seem quite right. So, yeah.
Councillor Foster, so the reason for the differences is that we've moved to a different reporting model. In the months of February and March, we're reporting based on what we call individual consents. But the correct methodology for reporting back to the Ministry for the Environment is to report each consent inside the bundle, which is what shows a leak.
So they've got 18 global consents with a whole lot of funds bundled inside them.
Yes, so 18 consents, and so some of the one consent might include 9 individual consents, which is why the numbers are lower, but in April it's the correct figure.
It's the April, 405.
Yeah, 405.
That is what the asterisk tells us.
Right, didn't have an explanation.
Cool. We had an email from Julian and about this paper, and there's concerns from the industry, which is quite concerning for me, that we're not communicating as best that we can with the industry, and what we're saying is not actually correct in their terms, I guess. So is the collaboration between council and, I mean, you know, forestry is a major player in this region, and we've got to kind of assist in its well-being and its future, and not being, I mean, I know we're having to put a lot of compliance in for the environmental effects that we've seen, and that's fine, but as long as we're not damaging the industry in the process, which we seem to be from their point of view, we are doing. And when we're seeing the amount of gangs that are having to leave town, find work, when we've got trees to come down right around the region that are urgently needing to come down, you know, my question is how are we working closer with the industry to try and accommodate their needs and their concerns, managing the environmental aspects as well. I mean, it's a balancing act, I know, but you know, I guess from their point of view, we are being a bit heavy-handed, I guess, and I just want to know how we are communicating with them to try and mitigate that, and to, you know, collaborate with them so we're all on the same page and we've got forests that can be harvested safely, and we've got work in the region for all the forestry crews. I really don't like hearing when forestry crews have to move out of town down to Wairoa because there's trees here that they can't access because of some of our requirements. So.
Sure. Thank you, Councillor Foster, through your worship. Yeah, it's a great point to make, and collaboration is really important. So the council's consents team has, probably for the better part of the last 3 years, invested a significant amount of time, energy, and resource into firstly developing the sound regulatory framework. But as of late, particularly over the last 12 months, it has shifted the dial into very much that collaborative space around engagement. So as you'll know, we have engaged a forestry navigator, and they have supported us across many facets of the regulatory system ultimately. So for instance, we have regular meetings, operational meetings with each forestry company. We also have quarterly meetings at the executive level to discuss issues, risks, future concerns, future opportunities. We have, particularly over the last 6 months, held various workshops around council's standard forestry consent conditions. It has also, council's teams also dedicated resource to creating an exemption pathway where forestry companies might not necessarily hold the in-house expertise required to undertake some of the design and implementation work required of particularly some of the larger infrastructure. And so we've created a pathway for some personnel to be considered exempt ultimately. There's also some significant pieces of work around enabling foresters to replant in a way that's sustainable going forward. And we continue to offer considerable and forthcoming pre-application advice and advice throughout the process. So in terms of council's efforts, it really is focused on that collaboration and ensuring that you know, we're granting resource consents, we're identifying the correct process for the scale and significance of the activity, and also our receiving environment.
Yeah. Through your worship, can I just add, so along with the collaborative work that we're doing, I think the real question is around whether the council is willing to continue activity on high-risk areas, knowing the consequences of that activity. And these are the areas that we're talking about in terms of consents. You require consents for the most highest risk areas for harvesting. You don't need it for any of the other land that's permitted under NES. So that's the piece of the puzzle that, are there things that council can do about it? Yep, it's about the risk that you're willing to take in relaxing some of these conditions. And the people downstream from those areas, they don't have a choice about forestry debris coming on their beaches or onto their property, nor do ratepayers have a choice about the infrastructure that we have to pay for if we continue like we had in the past post-Gabrielle. The other part I want to point out is that we're 3 years from that point. We had the ministerial inquiry into land use. We are now seeing the implementation impacts from tightening up those rules based on the science and the court precedent that we've seen. And we're not saying that forestry is bad and we don't want to work with industry. That's to the contrary. We know that absolutely we need employment opportunities. This is about how can we actually transition to the right land and provide the right incentives to do that. So it is a really, really hard line and I can appreciate the pressure that the council is under from the industry. We've certainly felt that pressure as well, and we're going to have a bit of a workshop with you around what the issues are and what we're doing about working more collaboratively with them. We sit down with forestry, we're open to having those conversations. But you do have a regulatory pathway and you are responsible for regulations, ensuring that they're implemented. The team are also going through a line-by-line review of the TRMP and the new National Environmental Standard for commercial forestry, and so there might be some things in there that provide additional relief. We're just working through that process, but for the time being, this is where we're at in terms of all the information that we're getting and all the impacts, and at the end of the day, council needs to work out its appetite for risk and where it's
I look at I've seen the whole trend, how we're going through and all the transition of land use and all that kind of stuff, but at the end of the day, even if these trees are in high risk areas, they've got to come down. That's the reality. These trees have got to come down and to be replanted with whatever in its place. So without those trees coming down by experienced foresters, they're going to come down on their own, which is probably a worse scenario. So there's a balance there, and there's going to be some serious questions to be, serious issues to be kind of resolved, so everyone's on the same page. But at the end of the day, those trees have got to come down, somehow, because otherwise we're going to have worse scenarios with full trees coming up and blocking and hitting our bridges. And
So through your worship, that we understand that, but the current frame is very difficult to incentivise forestry to take the trees off. So let's talk about, if we're talking about transition land, 3B overlay land, the current rules are prohibitive to being able to do that, and so this is the issue that forestry has been talking with us about. So how can we get them off the land? There'll be a moment of vulnerability, it's usually about 6 years, and within that time, if there's an event, then you'll go to our compliance team might come after them. That's the stuff that we're also actively working on, is around how can we create the environment so that they can get in there and do the stuff, recognising that it's to everyone's benefit that they do that. But we've got to work through the rule framework to get and land at that point that you're talking about, different to some of the other issues, although it may seem related.
okay, thank you.
I think as well, maybe if I may, Your Worship, through Your Worship, as Nadine's mentioned, the regulatory, the framework is restrictive and prescriptive across the highest risk land. However, it's not unachievable. So the council has never declined a resource consent application for forestry activity, and the pathway and the matters for discretion need to be appropriately applied, and so it is the consent holder then ultimately must provide that information and ultimately accept the resource consent conditions, which is how to mitigate the larger effects ultimately for it to be an activity that has sort of a minor effect on the environment ultimately.
Thank you.
Okay, I've got Councillor Ria, who's RT, Rob Telfer, and then Councillor Alder.
Thank you, Your Worship. Firstly, I just want to kind of centre it back on our report and our recommendations for the report. I really want to mihi to you, Awhina, and the whole consenting team. I know that throughout my last 4 years in the council that there's been some really sticky situations when it has come to consenting, and then just our workshop last week about the long-term plan and really understanding how regulatory functions are one of our statutory requirements as GDC, so it's a really important role and function that you guys play, and then being able to see the statistics on how you've worked really hard to refine some of the services and the initiative and the processes to help see that the time has been cut down in terms of applying and all of those things. So I just want to mihi to you and your team, Awhina. Thank you very much. I suppose I did want to, for us to just have a look at page 244, and the paragraph is number 17. I'll read it out to you. Maintaining this performance will require continued focus. The consenting environment is becoming more complex due to national reform, natural hazard risk, infrastructure pressure, freshwater requirements, forestry regulation, and increasing expectation from applicants, iwi, hapu, industry, and the wider community. I think because we quite often we have come back to this table a few times asking the council, where are the conversations? And we are reassured each time that conversations are happening, but we have found that sometimes, and I'm not just talking about the forestry, this could be iwi or hapu or marae, that sometimes those conversations have been had but have not been acknowledged because the applicant hasn't necessarily liked the answer or the outcome of the conversation. So I just want to acknowledge that, and that also happens, and we are all very aware that that happens as well. So I just want to highlight that because when I think about the conversation that was just had, we have heard from both sides of the fence, and those two communications that we're getting are not always lining up. They are not always lining up, but at least sitting at this table, I'm shown the data and I'm shown the evidence that staff are trying to enable that to happen. So thank you, staff. I'd like to move the paper. Thank you.
Councillor
Telfer and then Councillor Alder.
I don't want to repeat what Larry said, but I do want to touch on it, and I want to touch on Nadine's comments as well. The issue we've got is that not all of this land is transition land. Not all forestry land is transition land. We've heard that. We know that. But at the moment, we've got contractors that are having to leave the area to find work. And what I'd just like to encourage is that where possible, giving consent to get in there and get going, and until we sort out how we're going to do this piece of transition land that's in this forestry, can we actually just try and, we're getting told we need 4,000 hectares of forest consented a year to be able to get through a rotation, the life cycle of the forest, and the development that's been done at the port. We've got a twin berth port there now, we can move a lot of logs. We've got huge investment we've made. We don't want to lose these contracts. Once they're gone, you won't get them back, and it's very hard getting good contractors. So I'd just like us to really have a look at it, because if we're not getting near 4,000 hectares consented a year, we're digging ourselves a massive hole. We're just getting left behind. And you mentioned before that you've employed an in-house forestry person to work. I just asked, is this person, have they been from the forest? Have they come from the forestry background? Is that,
So just going back to your first point around the 4,000 hectare requirement, over the last month we've granted a number of forestry consents to a number of different companies. A few examples of those are 1,600 hectares granted to Earnslow and Manatū, 1,100 hectares granted to Bushy Knoll Forests, and we probably have another 5 to 6 consents sitting on our books that are very close to being granted. So I suppose the messaging that you're receiving around us not granting consents is not correct. Also, I know that there is quite a bit of commentary out there around forestry consenting being too expensive, but we operate within a pricing guideline, so applicants know at the forefront from the date that we receive the application, we assign a pricing guideline to what we call a category, so they know exactly how much their consent is going to cost, and we work with them on if it looks like there's going to be an overrun. So there are a number of other things that we do with those applicants. On the other part about the forestry navigator, yes, they do have a background in forestry.
What I'm experiencing is that there's a disconnect in data which we receive, which is data because it's publicly available. All the consents that are granted are publicly available. It's in the paper as well. And experiences from the forestry industry. So what we are saying is no consents have been denied. If people apply for a consent, what the forestry industry is saying, well, we don't want to apply for consent because we think it's going to be too tough with the new consent conditions. Is that where the conundrum is? That I'm just trying to address the elephant in the room. Do you think that is where the issue is? That there is not. We are doing what we're supposed to do, and I endorse what Nadine said. We are not a city council. Please don't forget that. We're a unitary authority where we are a regional council as well. Obviously, with my city council mayor hat on, we want to encourage any economic development and make sure that it fits in with what we see for the future for our region. And forestry fits in there. We also know that when the Prime Minister came here after Cyclone Gabrielle and subsequently ministers, they made it very clear to us, do your job as a regional council. And that is what the teams have slowly been trying to incorporate, but with a collaborative approach with forestry. There's still a disconnect. And how we bridge that is the big question. That's where I think a lot of this unrest sits, is no one is saying council is doing anything wrong or forestry is doing anything wrong. there's still a disconnect there, and we need to slowly try and see how we get there. You will see that I've invited the Minister to come and visit us as well, so we can show him the stuff that we've done, discuss with him the issues we have, because the message from the government is also very clear. You have a role as a regulatory body, do it well, because if we don't, and something happen, who do you think will be out of a job? 14 people around this table, they will say haere rā and put commissioners in to run this region because we didn't do our job as councillors. So I have sympathy for both sides and how we then marry that up to serve our community well and work alongside an industry who plays an important role, but also need to come to the party and make sure there is collaboration there. Yes?
Part of what I want to say, your comment, Nadine, about this overlay B land that's vulnerable. A lot of that land is actually not economical to harvest because it's got wind throw and everything else. So there are real difficulties, and the risk to downstream people that are sitting there. We've talked about our risk profile, and risk's been talked a lot about in different meetings. There is a huge risk also by leaving. The longer we leave that stuff there, the risk to these people downstream is getting a lot worse. So we've got to weigh that up. We are going to have to take some risk to be able to get these trees off this land. So then we can't do anything about transition until we actually remove the trees. And so there is going to be an element of risk, but we've got to weigh that up and actually publicise it well to people that we are going to have to take a risk. And unfortunately, it doesn't matter which way we go, we will get it wrong one way or the other.
Microphone.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, we will get it wrong one way or the other because ignoring it and leaving it, the longer we leave it there, if these trees do come down in a natural disaster, the consequence is going to be a lot worse than what we've actually witnessed already. So it's a bit of a catch-22. I totally understand the consenting side of it, the frameworks we've got to work under, but we've also got a responsibility to all our ratepayers out there and all the people of the district to try and deal with this problem. And there's no one answer that's going to get the gold-plated, take all risk out of it. Yeah, what I wanted to say.
Your Worship,
yes.
So we have what we call a standard set of forestry consent conditions. There's about 148 of them. We ran a 2-year engagement period with the industry, and out of all of those conditions, there's probably 7 or 8 that were left where we couldn't reach agreement. Those because they're quite strong on their intent and their purpose. But since adopting those conditions, we've probably granted 15 forestry consents. So that's not the barrier. It's an excuse, is my perspective on that. But what I would like to say is that on public notification and on limited notification, we are proactive. We support every single forestry applicant. They can come to us. We will work through any of the details that they put before us in a pre-application sense, and we will work through all of the details of their project or their proposal to get them to a point of non-notification. So they purposely come to us with their intent. I don't think it's the conditions. I mean, there are a few, it's more there's some interpretation issues around the conditions. And there's probably maybe a handful that we could look to work a little bit further with them on, but the majority of them fit the purpose in terms of what they're required to do.
Okay. Councillor Alder, you next.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Athena, for the report, and have to pass on feedback from who's much more pleased with the way things are going. I also got pulled up in the supermarket yesterday from someone who wanted to shout out to Daniel Coyer and her team for all the great help that they'd been there. So there's definitely been from what I see, a turnaround in public's perception of our consenting, which is great. However, still forestry is still niggling away. And in reference on page 255, 92.92, and it's basically our reputational risk, which is what we're all talking about. Reputational risk has two distinct areas. There's the short term, which is where this forestry slash will do what it did a couple of years ago. Or there's the long-term reputational risk, which probably won't affect any of us. No, council staff will have moved on probably, and a lot of councillors will have moved on. This is 20 or 30 years' time when the trees that are unharvestable cause the problem. I think it's the same situation that post-Bowler government and local and farmers faced, where there was a short-term quick solution, and that was to plant whatever was handy and plant lots of it. They didn't look at the full picture and the consequences of what they were doing then. And so they were looking at a short-term risk, reputational risk cover, and they weren't looking at a long-term reputational risk. So I just urge the whole team here to look at the long-term risk. Thank you.
Councillor Mio.
Yeah, I'd just like to, I'm really pleased to see the, to be in this paper, to see all the work going on to improve processes and that real focus on the customer. It came from a place of that we weren't doing, that we were upsetting a lot of people in 2-3 years more ago. And there was a lot of frustrations in the development sector, and the response has been good, and it's great to see all this ongoing work going on. And as Colin said, there are more good stories coming out now but of course there are still always frustrations from different people. I think the online decision reporting systems is probably, that was a big one, and it's good to see that efficiency there at 6 hours saving. I'd like to hear just a little more about how that is on the customer experience side, because I'm sure that eases a lot of the frustrations, and probably that 6 hour savings, I suppose you're talking at this end, but that's not being people pestering all the time to try and find out what's going on with their application. The key account management approach has been working well too. I've been hearing good things about that. So it's interesting that you're investigating that. So if you're able to talk more about how the key account management approach could be developing, that would be good. And just the other one you mentioned earlier about that proportion of external consultant planners, that you're looking to be more efficient in that area and have less external consultant planners is a great thing, because that's where I've been hearing where there's been frustrations lately is with those external consultant planners. So is there, what's the proportion now of our consents that are being dealt with by external consultants, and what's our target to get that down to?
So for all forestry consenting is processed in-house. So the only real use of external consultants at the moment is in what we call our district consenting, so subdivision, land use type activities, housing.
That's where I'm really talking about. I'm sort of setting aside the forestry issues.
Yeah, but at the moment we're not using consultants as much as we would normally use them. We've really started to tighten down on the use of consultants. Only time we have to use consultants is where the council is the applicant, so the consent has come from our Lifelines team or another team inside council. We get the conflict of interest, we go for an external.
The reporting systems, the online reporting systems, how's that going on the customer experience side?
Yes, that it has cut down costs, so that is one of the ways that we've managed to reduce costs for the applicant. So what we're trying to do is, as part of our key account management approach, is to better align the costs so that they have clear expectation, I suppose. What's happening is we're expecting people to get a consultant to prepare an application so that they provide us with all of the information that's necessary, but in doing that, they spend a whole lot of money on the consultant, and so what we don't want is a situation where they spend all the money and then they come in and they apply for a consent and we charge them exactly the same amount as they've already spent. So if they've already invested, we want to be able to turn that decision quickly at a lower cost than what we currently do. So that's our aim in the future, is to do that.
No, you've got a right of reply. Any other one wants to speak? Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, it's just good to see this continual improvement, and I was sort of most impressed with the page 333, where you've also considered people with culture, the staff well-being in that, because that's a big part of it. Staff who want to be there, they're going to give the customer a better experience. So it's good to see a big focus on that in there too, because it's a big part of it.
Before we have our right of reply, we do need to acknowledge improvement, and thank you for the transparent way you deal with this. We do know that there are issues that staff and the industry are really trying hard. Nadine and I met with Julian Conn and Dr. Elizabeth Lee from the industry as well. We do try to keep those communication channels open. There's real respect in the discussions. I have every time found them really productive. It is also a reminder that everyone that comes to those meetings, they really do want to do better and different and look at the long-term future. So thank you for your team, Nadine. I know you also actively involved with Jocelyn and Afina and trying to do that. Thank you also for councillors being supportive, wanting to know, making sure that it works well. At the end of the day, we do want to make sure decisions we make now, our kids don't have to mop it up. So we want to make sure that we make the right decisions to protect what we have, accommodate business, be economic development agents as well, but also wear our regulatory hats. And sometimes that's difficult, because that's the tough stuff. But thank you everyone for the respectful and productive process, and kia kaha. Keep up the good work, both our staff but also the industry. Thank you for that. I've got a mover in Councillor Ria. I've got a seconder in the Mayor. All in favour? Aye. Contrary? Carried. Thank you for that. Thank you, Afina.